Aloha.
How are you? Welcome to the Museum of
Good.
Graffiti's Daily Artist Talk.
What up,
It is,
Persway?
yeah, we got some friends that have joined us, so aloha to them as well. Estria, I'm so happy to have you on. You're a man who has contributed significantly to West Coast graffiti style writing culture and mural culture,
Thank you.
the streetwear culture. It goes down the list. Uh, But before I get into showering you, I want to read some of your bio to the folks that are joining us. Uh, Estria is a Honolulu-born graffiti writer and is also an activist highlighting the social and political power behind painting. In 2010, he founded the Estria Foundation to raise social consciousness through public art projects, education, and community events. The Estria Foundation was founded by Todd Estria Johnson and technologist Jeremy Latrace in Oakland, California. Estria established himself early on in 1986 during the San Francisco and Oakland golden era of graffiti writing. He and his crew TWS, together with Style, which included Crayon, Raven, Mike Bam, Picasso, Norm, and Neon, amongst others, was setting the bar for style writing and large-scale productions at the time. His writing collaborations would inspire great mural productions that would lead to commercial success and ultimately to addressing social justice issues through mural making and education. And with that, why don't we start with the Estria Foundation, and let's, if you can, because I want to encourage multiculturalism here. Can you read what you wrote here in Hawaiian?
Man, I can't see.
Well, in English, it says, no task is too big when done together by all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And truth to that, you started a foundation. Why? What inspired you to all of a sudden take to social issues?
Well, for a long, I grew up with like the YMCA and helping kids, and so early on I was taught to give back, and so I thought that I could use my art towards helping people. I liked doing both, and that was a nice way to merge doing the art with the helping. It just seemed to make sense. So the opportunity came along. Jeremy came into some money. He had to either give it to taxes or we started this. So we started this.
And
And that's kind of just how it happened.
and explain to me how water rights became a focus for you.
So being from Hawaii, it's a big concern, the trash in the ocean. You go to our most beautiful beaches and they're covered in a gazillion tiny bits of plastic. You can't even filter it out with a screen anymore. It's so small and numerous. And so I wanted to do a piece about trash in the ocean. And I wanted it to be more than just one mural. I wanted it to be something of a movement to raise awareness. And so we started this thing called Water Rights, and rights because we're style writers. It didn't dawn on me that the whole rest of the world wanted to talk about access to safe drinking water, who controlled those waters, who polluted it, what was happening to those waters, whether it's streams or ponds or underground water sources.
And so how many activations have you done with water rights?
With water rights, I believe we did 11 different places, and it's like South Africa, Palestine, Philippines, Central America, and most of those I didn't even paint on. The one you're seeing now is Oakland. That border took me 2 days. I'll never do something like that again. This one's in Hawaii. Yeah, but
But what?
in some of the cities, so like in Palestine, I think the team was like Vio and Josue Rojas, a good friend of mine, and they were there for say like 9 days, and I think they did 11 walls. All of them are gone because Israel bombed the schools, and so the murals are gone.
Right. I have images of that production, I believe, and it's quite moving because you did a ceremony in front of it. Is that correct? Is this part of it? Oh, this is a different version of it.
Oh, that's a mural in Oakland that our team really wanted to do in solidarity with Palestine.
Right.
Pretty heated topic to say the least, because you know some people don't want to support that. But when it's on a wall, whenever you put your art on a wall, it's got to be open for discussion, right? You got to take the cracks.
So you do get resistance for your political views on these murals. It isn't you like you have carte blanche by the community to paint what you wish.
Sometimes, I mean, we're trying to work with the community. So in water rights, we would find artists there, we would find environmental activists there, and a group of youth there, usually a school, that wanted to work on this. So it was a way of pairing people who normally wouldn't work together onto a project. So the environmental folks would share knowledge of the issues in their area. The kids would do the art with the artist would lead it. So it's a really, we tried to make it an empowering thing.
One of the things I've noticed too about these murals that you guys create, there is also a spiritual component to it, kind of paying an homage to powers greater than ourselves, let's just say. In particular in Hawaiian, if we could turn this around, in Hawaiian mythology, these things come through in the murals.
Yeah. So, you know, like when you're a creative person, whether you're making music or what have you, there's a point where you stop trying to force it to happen. Like you're not creating it. It's more like it's flowing through you. Like you're just this gateway, like the floodgates have opened and the ideas are just flowing. And when that happens, you really start to feel like that connection to what's above you, whether it's ancestors or something more powerful than us. And now with a program we have in Hawaii called Mele Murals, and we've since branched off to like professional development for teachers, sharing this process. Halau Paheona, which is visual art school. It's art classes in the schools based on the murals. All of it uses meditation as a way to teach the kids how to ground, how to connect to the earth. And you know, we're under the heavens, we're on top of the earth, and our role is in between the two to seek the guidance from above, to take care of what's below, so that it'll be around for a long time. And so we're using that as a way for the kids to connect or reconnect to their spaces, to know more about their place, to fall in love with where they are. Because we know that if they don't love where they are, if they don't care for it, they're not going to have the sense of kuleana, which is an opportunity of responsibility. They're not going to have the chance to, they're not going to take the chance to take care of their place.
That sentiment,
You know,
that sentiment is very clear in this mural. It's a big mural on the side of a building, and on the front side there's a child cusping. It's cute. It's a child cusping water, a waterfall that's coming out from the mouth, and there's this toucan that's also drinking from the water. So it's a shared experience in nature, which is quite beautiful. But what I really liked, speaking to what you just said, is if you look down the length of the building, it seems like there's a whole system of images and maybe messages that are connecting to this image, that speaks to the interdependency and interconnectivity that you're speaking about.
yeah, I can't really take much credit on this one. That face, that overall image on that front panel is led by Vile from LA, and I got to paint with him on that one. And then along that right side, and you can't see it, but there's a long wall that goes off to the left of it. A bunch of other local artists got to paint on that. So they're talking about different parts of the water system, you know, whether it's coming down from the mountains and coming through the pipes to LA, which should be a desert in a lot of that area.
Right, and there are these
Yeah,
little
but
motifs. What I
yeah,
like are those motifs you talk about, that they are just all connected by this pipe work that's connecting them throughout the length of the mural. It's a powerful piece. It really is. So in terms of, you know, messaging, you know, with regards to the ESTRIA Foundation, these projects like the one we're looking at now with a kind of native Hawaiian figure with, you know, beautiful, like cascading rainbow of
thank you.
hair and waterfalls from the breast. And tell me about this mural. Where was it done? What's the
Yeah.
process of
Okay. Yeah.
completing?
Thank you for sharing this one. This is a mural in a middle school called Jarrett. It's in a valley called Palolo, which is right here where we live and work. And in the same process, we worked with the children. We taught them to meditate. And in the meditation, they got this woman with like rainbow hair and waterfalls, kind of looking over them, watching out for them. So all of the ideas in this mural, the children got in the meditation. So we just put it together in a way that made sense on the dry erase board right in front of them. Like, is this what you guys are talking about? Yeah, yeah. And so what we had to figure out was, well, who is this rainbow woman? You know, and we meditated again and we asked and we got to it. Her name is Ke'aumelemele, which in Hawaiian means the rainbow. She's a sister of two of our most powerful akuas. Akuas are, some people call them gods, but I think they're like our protectors, our guardians. You know, in other places there were, I don't know, disciples and saints and prophets and all these different things. And in Hawaii we had akua. Akua believe they serve a higher calling themselves. I think they're spirits. They've ascended the body. They have more abilities. So this one, she uses her rainbows to heal things. So she's naturally a caretaker and a healer. And this one is trying to show the connectedness of us with the land, us with the water, from the clouds in her face down to the waterfalls in the mountains, you know, that repeating that whole cycle of water. And then the stars represent the ancestors, you know, souls are like balls of light, spheres of light. So just the connectedness of everything.
Right. And so the children, in terms of, because this is a great narrative, great storytelling and mythology, does this, you know, connecting the storytelling and the meditation and the practice, what kind of outcomes do you get from that in response from the children? Is it a healing process for them? Is it an educational process? Or is it just time to kill? What do you get back from it?
I think a lot of them start off thinking it's time to kill or it's fun time to color something. You know, we work with all ages, so the outcomes are different. But overall, we hope to connect them with their place. Most children we find don't know the names of their own neighborhood. You know, they don't know any of the stories of their place. We try to teach them that land holds the memory of things that have happened on it. So if it was something traumatic, it's probably still feeling that way, which is why you have like high suicides in that area or high crime in those areas. And somebody or a group of people need to come in and help that land heal. So we're trying to teach these kids to be attuned, to listen to the water, to listen to the winds, to listen to the land, and to fall in love with it in that way. We also hope that they'll be excited and inspired by the project and will come back to our classes to get more learning. And hopefully, with any luck, we'll be able to kind of help raise this next generation of these visual storytellers that tell the stories of these places, that keep us connected to our places. So when visitors come, you know, I envision all of Waikiki covered in murals. So when the airplanes fly by, all the tourists go, whoa, look at this place is rich. They have their voice, they have their connections, you know.
Are you finding that as you do these murals in these communities that they transform the community, or do they just look like decorative pieces, just, you know, mural making that's very common today? Especially since you're thematically dealing with heritage, how important is heritage to the Hawaiian communities you serve?
Yeah, you know, Hawaiians were like about 10% or less of the population in Hawaii, to show you how far colonialism has gone. So for us to put these murals on our walls, we're trying to increase the voice of the Hawaiians, to empower that, so that these stories aren't forgotten, these names aren't forgotten. It's kind of like you forget the names of those people and they start having a connection, you know. But
right. If you could look at this slide, because this is obviously a very important woman, her portrait. She has what looks like a sash around her front. It's actually a waterfall coming across her body, and she's just so she's like a queen.
So this is Queen Lili'u Okalani, our last reigning monarch before the takeover of the kingdom by the U.S. happened during her reign. It started in her brother's time. But she genuinely had a lot of aloha for the people. She understood our connection to the lands. So that's why we made her throne behind her, like the crown lands, the most prized lands where the waters flow. And her sash, which is something she would wear in formal occasions, we turned it into the waterfall. And overall, this mural says, flow mako to makai, which means mountain to the sea. Um, yeah.
You've said before that this was one of your favorite murals. Does it remain?
Well, I don't know which one's my favorite or if I even have one. I always feel like it's more the experience than the final product. Although I think when I walk away, I leave that mural behind and it's this landmark in their community. So I sure hope they like it, but I don't know which one's my favorite. I measure them by the special stories that happen with them, whether the little things that happen with kids or some of the connections you make there, or even some of the crazy ooga booga chicken skin spiritual stories that happen with it too.
So here we have a mural with, it seems like a mountain goddess in green. She's kind of growing out of the mountainside, the cliffside. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of imagery baked into that imagery of the mountainside, very lush and green. And how many, like 50 students in front of it?
Yeah.
It's,
Thanks for sharing that one. That's on the windward side of Oahu, so where a lot of rain hits and the mountains are very steep because a long time ago there was this huge landslide and the mountains just basically cut in half. But this mural is that image, that woman, her name is Haumea. In this lifetime, her name is Kameha Ikana. Her like superpower, if you will, is to have lots of kids and then come back as a young, beautiful woman and then have lots of kids with the next generation and then the next generation. So she's accredited with birthing the chiefs of Hawaii as well as the common folks of Hawaii, and also for birthing the islands themselves. Um, so to make her, really connected with the environment, and then where her stomach is, you can kind of see behind the kids like this glow.
Mm-hmm.
We call that your na'au, your center. For Hawaiians, we believe you have three special places: the top of your head, which is your connection to the heavens and to your ancestors, to the past, and then where your belly button is, that's to now, and your those of us who are here now, and then where your groin is, that's to the future where we make kids. So when you stand up straight, you're in alignment, take off your shoes and touch the raw earth. And then that's how you connect past, present, and future.
So Estria, the bulk of the murals that you produce for the foundation are very specific, right? Culture specific, is it safe to say that?
Yeah. Yeah, because of the meditation, in the meditation, we teach folks to ask the land what it wants. And the land doesn't necessarily speak in words, it speaks in feelings and images. So each of those murals is very specific to where we paint.
Here we have a beautiful portrait of a young boy with a headdress made of leaves. So let's talk about expanding the mission, because you did mention that you were doing this project for Palestinian issues and water rights. I know that's a contentious issue with a lot of people dealing with politics and art, but it is a healing tool. It is something that brings our communities together. It helps us discover each other, amongst that a hidden talent perhaps. These kids, how many of them pursue art afterwards? Do you know? Do they ever come back and say, hey man, I've continued with my art studies? And
Yeah, I don't know yet. With the with the high school students, we can see that some of them go off to art colleges. But it's hard for us to measure the middle school and elementary because we lose touch with them when they change schools. But yeah, we're seeing some of them go into the arts or want to stay and work with us after they graduate and things like that. A lot of them come back and volunteer or help out.
yeah, I mean, you guys are producing magnificent murals. And let me ask you something. Who funds this work? Who is this? Is state run or is it private funding that helps you guys stay afloat?
Yeah, we're a small nonprofit, so we have to hustle. So we chase grants. We always ask for donations. A lot of people will chip in things. Paint companies have been super supportive. Um, and then when we paint with the kids, families bring food, so they all chip in these other things. Definitely not getting rich doing this, but the quality of life and satisfaction in what I'm doing is high.
So is this something that was already in your radar when you were a young kid? How having social justice passion is not something a 16-year-old kid would find, so to speak, especially
Yeah,
coming from graffiti.
my mom, we were fortunate. She said you can go volunteer at the Y instead of getting a job bringing in some money into the house. So um, because she let me do that, I spent all my summers and after schools down at the Y, and we're helping kids, we're helping people. So, as a teenager, we're actually being taught how to dream of changing the world and how to kind of systematically go about that, how to make a plan, how to build teams. So I didn't have
Yeah, but
usual.
it's interesting you would be learning this at a young age, but then going out and destroying the city with your whole crew.
Yeah, and we're beautifying it. We're liberating spaces.
Let's go back to those early days,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
be, because you were telling me of course you're from Honolulu. There was a scene back there, and you mentioned some of the old pioneers, Slick and Skez, and your homie Mike Bam, of course. Um, I, Hawaii being so remote, how did you come in contact with graffiti and hip hop culture?
Okay, so back then, and this is like 84, 86. There's not internet, there weren't magazines. IGT was the first publication we saw about it. And we would get those in a little store called Revolution Books. I think we would steal it, and I think they kind of knew we were stealing it, but they just didn't say anything. Um, I'm not supposed to say those things. But yeah, the old fashioned, like taking pictures with like a 110 camera with a flash cube, and then driving to other cities and driving around and trying to find pieces, and then try to find writers and meet them and make friends so that you can mail photos back and forth every month or every few months was the only way to up to different styles, because without the internet and the magazines, styles were unique to each city and unique to a lot of neighborhoods. So in these pieces
And
here, yeah.
what about on the island of Honolulu? I mean,
Oh, okay.
where was style centralized there? Was it
Um,
just in Waikiki, or was it North Shore?
no,
Where would you
no.
find it?
Well, our islands, people painted a lot of. We have these water tanks on our mountain ridges, and then we have these canals where our streams are supposed to be. So, like where the bloodlines of the islands are, they paved it so that they could control where the stream is, and they could build more houses instead of letting the streams meander and flood. But that's where a lot of writers would paint. Uh, Slick had his crew Bomb Squad, and they were running it out in their area of the island. So innovative. And then for a while, they were rivals with another crew called Masters in Art, and that was more in town where we are. And my buddy Mike Bam was one of the leaders of that group. So to me, those two groups and their surrounding circle of friends were the ones leading things on the island back then. I know there were more, but I'm old, man. I don't remember all the names.
But it was also apparent that Mode 2 and Chrome Angels was having an effect on you guys with style writing and the lettering.
Okay, yeah. So in '86, when I went out to San Francisco, Jim Pregoff was living there, and because we were in with Crayon took us to Jim Pregoff's house, and he would show us slides of pieces that he'd photograph around the world, Australia, Europe, all these places that obviously we couldn't afford to go. And it opened our eyes, and he wanted to show us what was happening. So he would show us the best of the best. And for him, one of the top at the time were the Chrome Angels out of Europe. And that stuff was inspiring. So we we wanted to raise our game, you know.
And in this image, you could see the influence.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
probably from like Prime and Bando of TCA. This is me and Bam uh getting off at like the last train stop in San Francisco and just walking the tracks in the dark one night for, I don't know, 2 miles till we found walls, and then painting
well,
in pitch black.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in Northern California, you have a metro system. Was it something that you guys spent time trying to hit, or was it too hard?
There were freight trains, and then there was these like electric train like buses, and the electric ones, there weren't as many yards, you know, as like New York has, so not as many people hit them, I think. A lot of tagging. Um, it was fun to hit the freights. In Oakland, there's more yards than San Francisco for freight. So that was a big deal. It still probably is a big deal. It's the most fun thing there is.
Another thing influencing you, we see in the early 90s was the influence of Hex and Slick, right? In the way they were shading characters. And that was a big thing for California. It was a big innovation to start shading characters in the way they have had.
Yeah, I would say shamelessly the credit goes to Slick because he was so good at painting and airbrushing that when he got to LA and they turned him on to what they call the Phantom Cap, which is now
Right.
like an outline cap, today's outline cap. But we called it Phantom Cap, and you would get them off of like crystal clear sprays and testers spray paints. But they would give you these clean edges, and you could do this fade and cut. So he figured out how to do this fade and cut technique on his characters that nobody else had, and that then he shared that with my crew, with me and Bam, and we started sharing it with friends in the Bay Area. So maybe Slick shared it with other people too, and it spread. But for us, it took off like wildfire in the Bay Area.
Did you guys have a preference when Slick and Hex had that battle with where lines drawn up north? Okay, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, I was saying that Crayon was friends with Hex first, and we were friends with Slick first. So we were different parts of our crew were cheering both sides.
Diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things too, also that was changing, and I thought these two images were very interesting when we start thinking about Northern California graffiti, street art, the political movements that have existed there, both in the Asian communities and the African American community. Um, what was the climate for you guys, you know, during this period politically? Because it's always been a hotbed for ideas, and when you get something so radical like street graffiti and you know, muralism in the way that you guys would come to make, what, you know, I believe that place has a special energy that has led you to where you are today. But how was it for the writers themselves in terms of a community, a
Mm-hmm.
writing community?
That's a good question, Mayor. Looking historically at the Bay Area, I mean, this is the summer of love place, right? The progressive capital of the U.S. in a lot of ways. Um, so much movements, the Black Panthers, the takeover of Treasure Island, the reclamation of Treasure Island, all of these kinds of things that happening out there. So I think that being politically aware, being um, aware of how people are oppressed, you know, how colonization happens, how to combat those things is kind of common out there. And so I think it naturally seeps into the writing culture. If you look at LA, you know, they had so many gangs that writing tag banging was like in a natural evolution, a branch off of that. And I think because we had that kind of hippie progressive movement, there was a lot of like, oh, we should get along with folks. There were beatdowns, but I think people were trying to use art. A lot of people were trying to use art in positive, uplifting ways.
And so one of the things that also really you guys, your crew, TWS, became very famous for were the big murals, the big productions. We were talking earlier about the big battle between TWS and TMF. Um, I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we're going into old history now. I gotta like dig up the files, but
Okay, no, well, my,
yeah,
my,
to
my
get
point leading towards one, how the competition was starting to kind of push you guys in another direction in terms of what you were painting, how much time you were painting and invested in actual painting, but also in the kind of characters and backgrounds and styles you were leaning towards. It was just like who could make the best big scale production with in times less emphasis on letter writing.
yeah, in the 80s, crews shared influences with each other and kind of kept it secret within the crews, So there was like TMF, the Masterpiece Creators, or the MPC was that one, the Most Fabulous. Those guys were doing a lot of funk productions. Um, and then TDK out of Alameda and Oakland, they had nice funk. They also had what we call new wave, so they had both things going on. For TWS, our crew, um, together with Style, it was definitely about pushing the envelope and trying to do what people were calling new wave, where we were trying to get away from New York styles and come up with new ideas. If you were into classical New York styles, you probably hated what we did. But nowadays, it looks like a lot of people have done those things and done it way better than us now. But understanding that when we first grew up as kids, we lived in places where walls were blank. There was not a people's voice on it. Nowadays kids grow up seeing writing everywhere and they don't have two thoughts about it. But to go to a place where there's no voice and then suddenly realizing that you can have a voice and you can put it on the wall and the people can control the walls, that's huge. So like when I travel, I feel safer when I see a city that has writing on the walls because I know that the people have a voice. And when it's just totally clean, I feel like the city kind of runs things and it's kind of a scary place to be. Um, so with the writing, to realize that, whoa, we could make this stuff, we didn't have anybody to learn from. So we had to learn amongst each other. It was hugely inspirational. So to explore some of the pieces you've seen, like the one above is talking about time travel. We had some fashion characters that Bam and I were into. We were starting off with the B-boys and wanted to venture into other areas.
Yeah, the mural you're
Always about
talking about
pushing.
is interesting because you on the left hand side you see prehistoric Tyrannosaurus Rex and then a space character seemingly running into his spray can spacecraft, right? Is
Yeah,
that correct?
just that one above that you see is funny because we were paid by the city of San Francisco to do this mural, but at the same time I was getting busted by the city of San Francisco for tagging, and so they were trying to fine me, but they were trying to pay me. It, and yeah, it's hilarious. But this one is based off a Ray Bradbury story where people can go back in time and shoot dinosaurs like right before they die. And someone gets scared and steps off a path and steps on a butterfly, and it changes the future to be like a fascist state. God, maybe it already
Wow,
happened.
that's pretty heavy for a public mural, my
Yeah.
man. But again, one of the things that's been, wonderful in seeing how this all starts to take shape as to where we are now, where the focus starts moving to these very elaborate narratives and mural productions like this one, like uh, the winged. I don't know if she's an angel or a she devil or uh,
Yeah.
explain this mural to me because there's a lot going on and two central figures, one on the left who looks like a giant uh, creature from the sea.
Yeah, so this one is actually the back of a McDonald's. McDonald's had changed ownership. The new owner came in to Presida Eyes Mural Art Center and said, hey, we want to connect more with the community, and we think a mural is going to help us do that. So a bunch of artists painted stuff. We spray paint kids got to do whatever on the back, and this is what we came up with, trying to represent the different elements, you know, so lava and earth on the bottom, and the water, the air and fire. And not the most relevant to the community or culturally correct or anything. It's just kids, I don't know, hormonal or whatever.
So as you guys in this period, who else was doing murals at this caliber?
Well, there was Twist coming up. There were a lot of exciting artists.
What was Twist like in the early days? Because he was known for his hand style writing, and
he was quiet then too. Wore a plain old jacket, had a little VW bus. He tried his hand at color characters, but I think after a surfing trip to Brazil, he came back having met the twins, and stuck to like Odie, Cocky, and beige color characters. That was his thing, the Odie, Cocky.
one of the things that was interesting is that while he was developing those characters, there was a whole new style of caricature developing out in California that would just come to just blow everybody's socks off. It was really amazing. Of course, like you said, starting with Slick and Hex and some of those guys, and even Risky as well.
Well, I think that we mainly had freights as trains. We didn't have as many commuter trains. So for us, there were a lot of walls. There are a lot of walls facing the train tracks. So the amount of time you could spend on a piece was a lot more than a train. We could go back and paint another day or another. We did one tunnel. It took us 3 nights.
Estria, I'm having a bad connection with you. I'm going to disconnect you for a second and log you back in, okay? Because there's bad reception on my end. Thank you. We'll be right back with Estria, folks. Hopefully we'll have better reception with him. He is in Hawaii, so there's no accounting for your internet service in Hawaii.
Yeah, it's slow.
But so Estria, another thing that we should talk about as you're developing, one of the things, and I like this piece that you sent me, because in my recent conversations with somebody like Deffer and talking about, the development of a Californian graffiti type style that comes from the Mexican community, so to speak. But this particular piece was of interest to me because it also, it's got that baked into it, but it also reminds me of some of the old Broadway elegant style that I knew as a kid. And my question to you, how much influence was Southern California, like gang graffiti, having on Northern California?
I think that if you were in the gangs, then you were quick to adopt it, and use it in the way that gangs used it. But for writers, I feel like it picked up a little slower behind. Like LA was well developed into their styles before we kind of jumped that direction. I think we were lingering longer on the New York and Chicago styles before we got to the gang stuffs. But once we jumped on that, it was over.
Yeah. And let me ask you something. Given the talent you've gained by this point, did you not have an interest in going into the art market? I mean, yes, you've done some great commercial projects, which you should probably mention, but also that you stayed away from galleries to some extent. That art world shit wasn't of interest to you.
Maybe. I mean, I just like painting walls, and I like spray painting, so it's big, and maybe I just wasn't savvy enough to figure out the transition to the gallery scene. I did a little of it. I feel so restricted on the canvas, and I haven't yet found a way to make it feel the same as a wall.
Well, one of the things, again, I want to go back to your activism and how you've channeled graffiti both into, you know, these cultural murals, but also into a celebration of style through the ESTRIA battles. And you've done them for many years. And again, it's a great program where you select a theme and you invite artists to come paint, and they have to paint that theme, and then they're judged by their peers. But it's beautiful because, as we see from this clip in the video, it's not just graph. You bring in a lot of other engaging elements, both in entertainment and education for the youth.
Yeah, thanks. So we used to throw these writing battles called the ESTRIA battle. Started literally in a backyard type thing in Oakland, and then it became part of a Life is Living festival in a park in West Oakland, where we would close off a big chunk, half the park, and then all the park, and then closing off the streets as well. And, you know, it had all kinds of cracking things happening. Most Def doing a freestyle while folks are painting, people powering, like riding bicycle powered stages, all kinds of great things happening simultaneously. So we were able to take that to other cities. So we took it to like Chicago and New York, LA, brought it to Hawaii a couple times. And it's great because we can get the OGs to be judges and have folks compete. They would be given a word and then have, I think, 4 hours to paint it, freestyle. They all get the same colors. We used to get paint donated, get all kind of stuff donated, and just have a blast painting. It expanded to film nights and panel discussions and art shows and live paintings across town.
And how many years have you been programming the graffiti battle?
We stopped, but it was about 5 or 6 years, or around 2008 maybe to 2013. Eventually we stopped because honestly it was money out of my pocket every year, and then it was we never made a penny off of that thing.
But you really kind of brought it on. You've got some great people that came through and painted, some of the best painters, you know, going head to head.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you see Crush on the bottom doing a beautiful one, and you know, does this have a future again in your programming because it was successful once? Do you think it could come back?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody on the team had the energy to do it, sure. I don't. I like the deeper connection with the young people. I like the getting to know the place. I like the spiritual part of what we're doing now a lot. We didn't have any of that when we did these battles. These things were fun. So I think we would probably shift it if we did it again. Also, it's really hard
It's
to get
nice. You
funding.
got some celebrity guests to show up and judge. You have
Oh yeah,
Doge and that's pretty cool.
yeah. Risk, Slick, yeah,
Yeah, I came down from one in New York. That was fun as well. That was a good
yeah.
time. So, Estria, as we start winding down, as I ask everybody that I speak to, you know, who are artists and who are either practicing art in the studio or in the community, clearly this period is a real challenge for a lot of us in terms of how we fulfill our mission, both personally and creatively, but also to the community that we serve. Have you guys activated anything during this period?
We've been busy. We offer classes in some of the schools in Hawaii, so we had to, just like teachers, figure out how to offer that online, so we could honor our commitments to the young people. And so, you know, I'm not a fan of these visual things. I like the face to face, the sharing of the energy, you know. I like being able to look in the eyes of people and see what they're really thinking or feeling. Um, I like seeing the wonderment, you know, when you show them a new technique, and I just don't feel that through this screen. So, I mean, we'll do that for now, but we're going to have to get back to painting in person. Um, and I think that if you set yourself on what we call pono, a pono path, which is like righteous, it's just, it's balanced, it's in harmony with
Hmm.
nature. If you set yourself on a path like that, I believe that the resources, the people, the financing, whatever comes into your path at the time that you need it. And if you find constant obstacles to what you're trying to do, it's you have to stop and step back and reflect and ask, like, am I going on the right way? Because they're trying to tell you something like, don't go this way, don't go this way, go this way, you know? Um, so I
Yeah,
think for artists that are trying to do stuff like that, you know, if you're trying to gouge people on prices right now, you're looked at as the enemy, right? And if you're trying to help people right now, you're looked at as a hero. So it's all about helping others and not a time to be selfish when it looks like you should be
I
selfish.
appreciate that, man. Yeah, and I appreciate your generosity in spending the time with us to tell us about what you've been up to for the last couple of years with the foundation. Folks, if you're out there and you want to ask Estria a question, please do in our closing minutes. Would love to hear what you have to ask. Um, so, Estria, in terms of your personal practice, what have you been focused on as an artist at the moment?
Oh my God. I've put my own career on the side to push this a nonprofit and the program. So now I'm finally at the point of like, hey, I gotta get back to it. I'm missing that, you know. That's what I'm here to do. It's the thing I love the most. So getting my act together and rebuilding everything.
Good. Persuade says it's good to see you. You
Yeah.
have a lot of old friends out there.
Yeah. Pengo.
Well, one of the things I have to tell you, because one of the things that's becoming more and more clear as I do these talks is how many of us rather in this culture have turned to social justice issues, to activism, to education, to passing the torch, to advancing the culture creatively and intellectually as well. And also finding that we can serve a purpose, right? That we are purposeful outside of just the practice of the studio art.
Yeah. I don't have any words for you. I agree with that.
No, that's okay. So let's leave it there. I want to thank you again, Estria. Mahalo or Merhalo,
Thank
my
you.
brother. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much for
much.
joining the Museum of Graffiti. You know,
Yeah. I love
we are
what you're doing,
here.
man. Keep going.
Well, thank you. Well, we're here to, you know, also lend our voice to artists like you who have contributed and continue, you know, to contribute to make a difference in the world, right? It's so important that we um, advocate for one another and at the same time
Oh,
advocate
Wayne.
for others. Yeah, Wayne's in the house.
Nice.
COD. So listen, tomorrow, folks, we have Say Adams with us. So that should be a good conversation.
Oh,
Him and I go back to, I guess we were 14 years old or something like that. He's a fantastic artist, contemporary artist, but also infamous for his graphic design through the early 80s in hip hop uh, culture. You know what? Bella Machina asked if there is a public funding we can get. I can't see if there is a public funding we can get events up again. If there's public funding, can we get the graffiti battle up again? I imagine.
oh, yeah. Honestly, I would need someone to help us fundraise for it because right now the existing team is focused on the existing projects. So to add another project would mean we need more help. But yeah, there's funding out there. It's more also um, things like that really appeal to corporate sponsors, and then they usually rather
Hmm.
give swag and merch rather than cash. So that's always a
Do you
challenge.
as Let me ask you something. Do you as an organization have you started measuring your impact and having analysis of that to present to folks, long-term
Yeah, you
basis?
got to measure your programs to show the folks who gave you money why it was worth it to give you and why they should keep giving you. Um,
Right. And
yeah.
so are you tracking some of your students over years, their development? And
Yeah, that's hard because that means somebody's got to call them and stay in touch with them. And, you know,
mhm. Well,
I don't
there's
know about,
Instagram.
yeah, yeah, I'm so hardly on Instagram anymore. I just can't do it. But we want to see, are we moving the needle on different things like raising awareness, confidence in meditation, art skills, knowledge of basic concepts, things like that, so that we can show like, yeah, this project does this, right? Or this. Um,
Right. It's holistic, let's just say. It's
yeah. And then with the meditation, that's part of like your wellness, right? Your well-being. So, um, are we getting people to do that more often? Are they spending more hours in their life doing things like that? Yeah.
with that, my brother. Mahalo once again. Thank you. And again, folks, tomorrow, join us with Say Adams.